Hey, hello, what is going on, YouTube fam? This is your boy J Money here, and I'm bringing you guys something just a little bit different today. This has been something that I've been wanting to kind of just put out there for the past couple of months. But with the conclusion of YCS Chicago, I decided to kind of just expedite the process and do this now. And, it's going to be done a little bit differently than I originally intended. I originally planned to do just a video titled My Journey as a Rogue Player. But as you can clearly see from the thumbnail, it's going to be a little bit different. And today I want to kind of discuss the benefits of playing rogue decks. Now, I'm not going to take away anything, from people who play meta decks or anyone who, is just a meta player who plays meta decks religiously. Everybody has their thing, and that's cool. So, I will go into a few of the benefits and, kind of some of the reasons as to why I play rogue decks. Like, I play like rogue decks that are on the fringe of kind of being meta, except, we play meta relevant things to go along with it. But that is something that is a benefit that I am going to list off later on in this video. So anyway, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Reason number one, and it's the most common reason, and that is, benefits of playing rogue decks. People aren't prepared for your deck. In many ways. One, either somebody has never played against your deck before, or maybe played it once or twice within within a 4 to 6 month time span, where, they just don't have the certain win condition or the certain play strings just kind of registered in their brain, whatever the case may be. And that could give somebody an inherent advantage against the meta person playing a meta deck, simply because whatever disruptions the opponent has, they're very likely to use it against the wrong cards or at the wrong time. Sometimes, with certain rogue decks, if you get too far, then, using those certain interruptions don't even matter, because they already got to a certain point to where it's just snowballed out of control. And, that's just common knowledge at this point. And, so that's reason number one. Number two, obviously, not being prepared for your deck also ties into not having a side deck prepared for said deck. If you're playing if you're smart enough to choose a rogue deck that also, not only has good matchups against some of the meta decks, but at the same time, can't be sided, some of the side cards against those meta decks cannot be sided against your deck, then, you're in a good spot. And, that's pretty fantastic. And that's what I do a lot of the times when I do choose a rogue deck. When I pick a rogue deck, I'm over here deciding, and I think critically, the meta decks right now, we got Altergeist, we got Sky Strikers, we got Thunder Dragons, and we look at some of the cards that get sided against those decks, and you need to ask yourself, because you're already aware that you are playing a rogue based deck. So you need to make your job a lot easier. You need to make your job as easy as possible, to kind of even the playing field when it comes to rogue versus meta. And, so when you decide to choose a rogue deck, you have to ask yourself, those cards that are sided against those top decks, can they in turn be sided against my deck as well? And, if the answer is no, then you're on the right track, So, those are some things that people need to take note of. Now, there is one other thing that people haven't really delved too deeply into, and that is And, you know, why are rogue decks doing so much better now? And if you look in 2018, we get a lot of supporting based engines, a lot of supporting engines that help rogue decks, as well as meta decks. So when you take into account that I can sit here and I can play a deck like Invoked and splash a bunch of Sky Striker cards in it because it synergizes with the deck, or, you know, same thing with Fur Hires, to where I can sit here and splash 3 engages, a Widow Anchor, an Afterburner, and a Hornet Drones, and it just raises the ceiling of my deck. Then I'm looking at, you know, something that was just like kind of casual to, you know, gets a little bit more competitive. The same thing applies when it comes to things like wind-ups, or, you know, other decks like Luna Lights, for example, that just won the YCS Chicago when you're splashing dangers into your deck. You know, there's so many more options. There's so many more like meta-based engines that you can use and throw it into a rogue deck to boost the consistency and to raise the ceiling of that deck to where they have a much better shot of competing against those meta decks. And a lot of people complain about that. A lot of people complain, oh, it's just dangers. It's just a deck, you know, that has a danger engine, or it's a deck that has a Phantom Knight engine, or it's, you know, or it's a deck that has a Sky Striker engine. Whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is, those engines really, really help out those rogue decks. So, you know, they're tools that you can easily use to, in fact, you know, turn the tides or even the playing fields against those meta decks. Yeah, that's just some things you got to think about. You know, why would you not use these things at their, just like, especially if it's a rogue deck? Again, you're already fighting an uphill battle when you are, in fact, playing against a rogue deck. Because your deck is rogue for a reason. You know, it could be fragile to certain things. It may not be as consistent as some of the other decks out there. And so when you play cards, engines like Sky Strikers and Dangers, prime example, that all that does is just cover the weakness, you know. As Super Boo once said, a good fighter knows his weakness, but a great fighter will always find a way around them. And that's essentially what you do for those rogue decks. Whatever the issue is, you do the best you can to find a way around those weaknesses. That's reason number 2. That took a while. Now we're going to go on to reason number 3. And the benefits of playing rogue decks is that it just... But okay, before I even answer, I want to go ahead and post a couple things up on the screen over here. And that is, I'm on Zodiac Duelist. So I sat there and I came across this post. It'll be on the screen. And it will say, you know, what is your excuse for not playing a meta deck? Blah, 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 blah. Again, I haven't seen this in a couple days. And my response to that was, it's just not challenging enough. And so what do I mean by that? Well, alright, so the reason why I don't play meta decks, and again, some guy from my locals, he swears up and down, he legitimately said verbatim, if you just play meta, you would probably win every locals. And that might be true. However, it's just, again, it's not challenging enough, it's not stimulating enough for me. And what do I mean by this? Well, when, you know, there are some meta decks that are easy to learn, difficult to master. That I understand. That's the same applies for rogue decks. It applies to a lot of other decks out there. But there are just, you know, there's just a lot of meta decks like Altergeist to where I don't need to really master the deck. I don't really, like, you know, Sky Striker, I don't really need to master the play strings inside and out. When I can play Altergeist and I can sit there and just open up my hand and have a Metaverse and, like, let's say a Miluseek, you know, searching a multi-faker on my main phase with the Rivalry of Warlords, game 1, and it's just like, I can look at that hand and I can just tell right off the bat that I'm just going to immediately win that game. You know, so this is not challenging enough for me. Now, you know, when you're playing a rogue deck, you're aware that it's rogue for a reason. I've said this before. So when you're playing rogue decks, you know, people can say, "Oh, you're just limiting yourself you're limiting yourself of just your of whatever the case may be." It's like a lot of meta players say that you're just limiting yourself for no reason, and all that stuff. But in my opinion, because I've played rogue decks religiously since I've been playing competitively, it also challenges myself. I'm also consistently challenging myself, and overall, I just get better and better and better as a player. Because especially now, a lot of these meta decks, you don't need to like play the deck to know what to stop. A lot of this stuff is like getting really, really simple now. It's getting really simplified to where it's like it doesn't take a genius. Like, you don't need to play the deck to know exactly where to stop it. You know what I mean? It doesn't take a genius to know that there's just silver bullets to every single meta deck, and it's just like I don't need to play it to figure that out. And so when I play Rogue, I'm put through a lot more challenges, and that really puts my brain to work. It really gets me thinking, and it really allows me to just start getting really, really innovative, and it allows me to just really it allows me to just do like a lot of critical thinking and all of that. And overall, I believe that just playing Rogue, I get a lot better as a player a lot faster than I would just playing meta, because there's just some meta decks out there to where you can just hand it to a 7-year-old and they can just play it with ease. And I know that might just upset a couple people, but that's just the truth sometimes. But that's the reason why they're meta, because they're just they got a certain power ceiling to it. They got a certain level of consistency. They just got super easy learning curves. Just the power. You don't need to understand as much. Whatever the case may be, meta decks are meta decks for a reason. But playing a rogue deck doesn't mean you don't play meta cards or meta engines to help bolster those as well. Now, one more thing I want to address is just because you're playing meta engines in a rogue deck doesn't mean you're going to win. Because if you look at it here, look at the past few events like that rogue decks have won. YCS Bochum, with World Chalice winning, taking the prize. YCS, what is the one with the Prank Kids as the winner? I'm not sure who won with Prank Kids, but there was that one, and then there's this most recent one with the Lunar Lights. I've gathered, meta decks just gets you, you can just play meta deck and get into the top cut. Sure, getting into the top cut, if you want that top, you can just go ahead and play a meta deck. That's fine. However, if you've noticed, a lot of those players piloting the rogue decks are really good players, and they seem to play rogue decks a lot. But it's those people that play the rogue decks that are insanely good players that take the W at the end of the day, because they combine their skills with the surprise factor. So you can't just expect to play a rogue deck with a meta-based engine and expect to do well. If you looked, a lot of those people that won those events with those rogue decks, they've had merits, like prior merits. They've had, former YCS wins, runner-ups, to getting first place, things like that. So, these were good players. And so, it's not as easy as 1, 2, 3. Don't get it wrong. You still, you have to keep in mind, when you're playing a rogue deck, you need to play your ass off when it comes to playing these decks. Like, making a misplay is super unforgiving when it comes to rogue decks. You're not allowed to make a mistake. You have to play perfectly. You have to be really good at reading your opponent for future turns, making the best educated decision based on the information you currently have. All of that stuff. There's so much more you have to think about when you're playing rogue than when you play meta, because you're not allowed to make certain mistakes, and you have to capitalize and you have to maximize on every single play you have and think about all the card economy decisions that you're making, you know, in regards to things like World Chalice, to where if I make a certain play here, you know, I may not be in this vulnerable of a spot, but I'm losing out in potential, you know, +2s and card economies, things like that. You just have to think about this stuff all the time when it comes to playing Rogue deck. And that all ties into just challenging yourself a lot more when you're playing a Rogue deck. When you're playing a Rogue deck, you are consistently challenging yourself. And that's why I believe when you do play Rogue decks, you get much better as a player, much faster than you would be, you know, just playing meta. And yeah, you can even say, but hey, you know, if you go to an event, you know, you would want to play meta. And yeah, it's tempting to play meta if I choose to travel and pay money to go to an event, hotels, things like that, etc. But, you know, I go to these events and I still choose to play Rogue. Like, I still actively choose to play a deck like World Chalice, to where it's just like, I'm that person to where I'd much rather just get second with a deck like World Chalice than get first place with a deck like Sky Striker, you know, because then, yeah, you're just the next person playing Sky Striker. Nobody's going to remember you. You know, people that play Rogue decks, they do really well with them, are often remembered. And I will get there at some point, you know, especially once I get on bed. I'm going to start going to all these events. I just might go to ARG in Vegas. I just might do it. But, you know, with that being said, let me know what you guys' thoughts are on this. This is, you know, as to why I play Rogue. Again, the 3 points, unfamiliarity, yeah, your opponent's not prepared for it. Yeah, that's a benefit, but that's an obvious one. For 2, you know, it's, you know, Rogue, all these meta engines like Danger, Sky Striker engines and packages and all this stuff does wonders for Rogue as well. So the gap, the skill gap, you know, or the power gap between Rogue and meta is ever shrinking thanks to these engines and all that, and that's a good thing. And number 3 is that Rogue decks just help you become a better player much faster because you're consistently challenging yourself and all that. So with that being said, let me know what you guys' thoughts are down in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. This is J Money, and I am signing out.